I study where people live the longest in the world. And when I started to study them, I'm like, oh, how they live their life. There are some common traits on how they live their life. And then I started to do the science behind how they were living their life. And it turns out how they live their life actually changes the molecular environment around the cells. It changes the signaling molecules, the proteins, the enzymes, the hormones. But oh my God, how you live your life is actually the medicine.
I want people to know no matter what's happening to you, it's a temporary state and it can go worse, it can get better. And a lot of this has to do with your own choices.
The story we tell about ourselves to ourselves actually dictate our biology. I'll say it again. Our biography dictates our biology.
So we all want to live long, healthy, and successful lives. And while we all want that, we also know it's not always easy. And sometimes it may feel like it's not even possible because life is not that easy. But what you will hear today may surprise you because there are actually 7 longevity hacks that you should know about that not a lot of people know about and not enough people apply. So we're going to talk about these 7 because they're important. We're going to also talk about the role of a patient in healthcare and the power that that patient has in clinical outcomes. And in that context, I also wanted to let you know, why are we here? We are here because there are many people who go from doctor to doctor. You know them. Sometimes they follow recommendations and they still don't get better. And I believe this is not right and something should be done. So we created Polish Your Life. It's an integrative healthcare community. We have a doctors networking group and we are actively searching for the best providers that we can find in the United States, in Europe, and right now across the globe to bring the knowledge, the experience, the clinical resources to collaborate, work together to get the best clinical outcomes for people. And in that context, I'm very happy to introduce to you our guest today because we met just maybe a couple of weeks ago at the Biohacking conference in LA. And I'll tell you guys, I'm so impressed, not only with his awesome, truly awesome keynote speech that was so inspiring and so full of value bombs. I'm also impressed with all the resources that he has, with the energy that he has. And I'm also really, really impressed with the level of positivity that he brings to healthcare. And it's so much needed. So guys, help me in welcoming triple board certified medical doctor, performance and longevity expert, host of Thrive State podcast, Dr. Kien Vuu. Dr. V, welcome to Polish Your Life.
Hey, it is a pleasure to be on. And, well, a lot of pressure to keep up the energy that you say I have.
Well, that energy I'm taking from you. You have all the energy, and right now I'm kind of like piggybacking on what you got. So I think it's going to be really, really awesome for our audience to know what these 7 longevity hacks are. What are longevity hacks? Why are we talking about this? So I think we can start pretty strong, and let's talk about these longevity hacks. Maybe start with what is important for people to know right away.
Sounds great. Well, the first thing you need to know is how you live your life is medicine. Our DNA isn't fixed, meaning, the DNA you get from mom and dad doesn't just sit there and then controls, your performance, or your longevity. But actually, the DNA is constantly listening to its external environment, and based on the messages it gets from its environment, it will turn certain genes on, turn certain genes off, and that dictates everything in your life, your health, your longevity, and the way you can perform. And so I studied the highest performing people all around the world where people live the longest. And it turns out there are 7 areas in life that most affect this environment for ourselves, the environment of our DNA. And if we can leverage them, we could actually give ourselves the signal to have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. So longevity hack number 1 is really in the area of sleep. Sleep controls our entire life rhythm. Our body is tuned to the night and day cycle. Our hormones go up and down with these cycles. And if you don't sleep well, your whole hormonal system, your whole circadian system is thrown off. That drives the stress hormone. So if you're not able to lose weight and you're like, oh, I've tried everything, doc, I'm still not losing weight, Are you sleeping well? Because that's super important. If you're not sleeping well, cortisol will run up and it'll also increase body fat. So a regular sleep schedule, I'm talking 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And here's the best thing that you can do for sleep is go to bed and wake up around the same time every single day. That will lock in your sleep cycle, even on the weekends. Look, I go to conferences and conferences will have parties that go later. Okay, enjoy yourself there. You don't want to be, a hermit, but, try to have a regular sleep schedule. That's going to be super important for your hormones that basically drive your entire body and nervous system.
I love it. And with sleep, a lot of people talk about sleep, and it's not only the time in bed, not only the time that we are sleeping, but also the quality of sleep, right? So let's talk about some hacks. And for people who don't know, maybe you can explain what a hack is. It's like, what do we mean when we talk about biohacking, longevity hacking? And then how do we hack sleep to not only have, more of it, which is, it's like, yes, we have the schedule, but also the better quality of sleep. What is the hack there?
Well, great question. I mean, the word hack really, goes back to basically hacking a computer, right? You've got this system, this operating system that's normally going on, but how can you break into that system and start to change up the program? And so our body is very much like that as well, right? We've got basically how our body normally responds to things. And based on what we do, we could actually hack into the system because now we know every single action, every single thought, every single feeling, and the things that we do in our life, how we bring food in. We'll go through the 7 things, but all these things actually changes the environment of our cells. And why is the environment of our cells important? Because that's exactly what our DNA is listening to. Is it like, oh, is there a safe environment? Is it a thriving environment? Because if we are in the thrive state, we are basically telling ourselves and giving ourselves the instructions for optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. If our cells think that we are in danger, if our cells think we are in stress, and again, these 7 things that we do or don't do can put ourselves in the stress state. What happens in the stress state? Inflammation goes up, immunity goes down. That leads to poor performance, chronic symptoms, and chronic disease. So based on our choices, what we do in life, we actually change the state that we put ourselves in. That ultimately directs how our cells behave. And so let's go to sleep. How do we hack our sleep? Well, again, having a regular sleep schedule is going to be very helpful. The other thing you could do is in the morning, what you do is probably one of the first things is go outside and get some early morning sunlight on your skin and into your eyes, because that's going to bump up cortisol right in the morning, which is supposed to go up right in the morning, but it also resets your whole circadian system saying it's now daytime. And that's going to allow you to actually sleep better later on in the evening is when you do that. Also, if you start to exercise, particularly in the morning, I find it very helpful. You not only increase endorphins, which is the feel-good hormones in your body, you increase brain-derived neurotrophic factors. So if you want to be creative, you want to be, productive during the day, exercise in the morning is a great form of that. Other hacks you can do is not include, caffeine past 2 p.m. because it might.
That's 2.
What's that? Past 2 p.m.
Past 2 p.m. Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm a coffee drinker, but I'll have it in the morning. Because even if you are sleeping at a reasonable hour, it's possible that you might not be getting the deep sleep if alcohol or caffeine is in your system. And so if you do drink alcohol, I recommend probably the last drink to be at least 3 hours before you go to bed. So that's something else you can do. Throughout the day, are you giving yourself an opportunity to just wind down, right? And so there a couple times during the day, I will just do, some very simple breathing where I'm at, get myself out of the stress state. And so when it's time to wind down, turn off your devices, your TVs, and things like that 3 hours before bed. Doing so because, we get a lot of crap light or blue light that comes in our system. Our blue light suppresses melatonin, which is a hormone that's not only important for sleep, it's important for, our immune system. It's important for fighting against cancer. But that suppresses that, and it's going to make you not sleep very well. And some of the, you notice all the hacks that I'm already telling you are absolutely free. And that is the great thing, I think, about when I tell people out there that really you are in control of your health. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. There's a way to really hack your system on a free basis. Now, people who want to spend money on things, well, you can have blue light blocking glasses, for example, and start to wear them probably throughout the day and switch over to a more evening, pair. Again, to suppress the level of blue light that you have. That's another thing. We could go into other type of biohacks for sleep. I don't know how deep you guys want to go into
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I think what you said is very valuable already, because I wanted to make sure that for our audience, like biohacking audience, of course, we talk about changing the environment, we talk about epigenetics, we are talking about hacking, biohacking all the time. We know, but there is a lot of people who will open, the computer or look at the cell phone, and they see this video and they're like, what do they talk about? What are they talking about? Is this like longevity hacking? What do you mean hacking, right? So now we know what hacking is, and in fact, it is related by definition to that hacking of a computer, which is a good analogy. We are trying to, like you mentioned, break through to this or break into the system, change the program. And then if the program is bad, changing the program is a good thing. And that's what I want people to know, because when we think about hacking, we think that's something bad. But if there is a problem and you have a hacker come in to do something good, that's kind of cool. So I wanted to just bring it out there. So that is great. We also know quite a few tips that you just gave how to improve the quality of sleep. I love it. One of the things that you mentioned just now is you are in control of your health as an individual. And that's something that I also want to talk about a little bit deeper, if you don't mind, because there is a lot of times a situation when you have somebody who goes from doctor to doctor, that person that we talk about, that they are in real trouble sometimes because they're like, I don't know where to go next. But the problem sometimes is, instead of looking in the mirror, they're going to be only looking at the provider and saying, it's your fault that you didn't catch something. It's your fault you didn't tell me to do this. It's your fault you didn't communicate with somebody, where in fact, we are in control of our health much more than we think. While some people are more lucky and they have better genes, they have better environment to grow up in. Fantastic. Good for you, good for them. The problem that I see is where people start giving that control and the power over their own health just to healthcare providers, where they're not living in your body. They don't know your body as much as you know your body. They are not in charge. And if they make a mistake, it's on you to figure out, okay, is it logically making sense what's happening to me right now, or is it not? So let's talk about the control and the power. I'm coming back to that biohacking conference keynote that you gave. That gives me chills when I think about it. You are talking about, it's your decisions, it's your choices that make such a big difference. And yet a lot of people don't realize, but when you look in the mirror, you see a powerful person in your life. Let's talk about it.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. I speak about this, coming from the medical side, right? I was trained at UCLA, the National Institutes of Health, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, probably the world's most prestigious organization when it comes down to medicine. But 7 years ago, I was a minimally invasive surgeon or an interventional radiologist, basically as a doctor using all this high-tech stuff to treat disease. But I was overweight, I was diabetic, I had high blood pressure, and I was on several prescription medications. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't given the tools of medical school to actually be well. In fact, I would probably say the culture of medical training as such is quite stressful. They promote, hey, you know what? You're not tough if you can go without sleep. They didn't teach us much about nutrition. In fact, the foods at the hospitals we were working at were not very good. I know a couple hospitals I was working at had, fast food joints in there. And so we weren't really given the tools there. And, when I was a doctor treating sick people, but I myself was also sick, I had to take a deep look in the mirror and say, oh my God, do I really have the tools to actually help people? And that's when I started to make some new choices. And some new choices really allowed me to study nutrition, epigenetics, longevity, regenerative medicine. I studied where people live the longest in the world. And I'm like, wait a minute. People that live the longest in the world don't have access to any of the technology that I did, coming out of residency and fellowship and the practice of medicine. What is it? And when I started to study them, I'm like, oh, how they live their life. There are some common traits on how they live their life. And then I started to do the science behind how they were living their life. And it turns out how they live their life actually changes the molecular environment around the cells. It changes the signaling molecules, the proteins, the enzymes, the hormones. I'm like, oh my God, how you live your life is actually the medicine. Yes, there are things in the conventional medical space that's used to help people, and I still practice that. But ultimately, the control is up to us. And yes, do genes play a factor? Yes, I would probably say that a very small percentage of disease is actually only genetic, meaning that gene is messed up, and then you get a disease from that. It's a very small percentage, and there's a lot of cool science, doing gene editing that's fixing some of that. Otherwise, you've got genes that might predispose you to stuff, so it increases the tendency you might get disease. But what did I say about epigenetics? Our genes aren't fixed. How those genes get, turned on and off is based on its environment. And what controls the environment? It's our choices and basically what we do with those choices. That controls the environment. That then means that the ultimate control of that environment, of those 7 things that we're talking about, is on you and not on anyone else. And that's basically my message to the people out there, is that you are your best medicine.
Yeah, this is so powerful. And that's for both. If you're watching this and you're a provider, think about your patients. Think about that patient that you just had maybe last week who walked in your office and had that victim mindset. And sometimes we are saying, oh, it's just, they don't have the right mindset. But sometimes it's not their fault because they were never taught this stuff, right? They never thought about how to be in better mindset, and they were never empowered. So when you see that patient next, my suggestion would be just consider gently introducing that message to them without blaming themselves now for their own, clinical problems, just empowering them. What Dr. V is doing right now is empowering all of us to think about how much control we can have over our outcomes. The second thing is, if you're watching this as an individual looking for clinical solutions, just keep in mind, you have so much power. We are talking about Bruce Lipton, we are talking about Dave Asprey, we are talking about all these people researching and then getting the data together and showing it to us. Like, it's happening right now. It's science. It's no longer a concept. It's science. It's very optimistic. So I wanted to bring it to our attention. And also in that context, having Dr. V here, who is a poster child for that, is wonderful, because his story is actually not always like, he looks great and you see his Instagram, he looks very strong. He is very strong. He is healthy, not only looks healthy, but is healthy, but it wasn't always like that. So Dr. V, touch on your story a little bit. I want people to understand what I now know. What is your story? Where is that passion coming from?
Yeah, well, great question. No, let's go. I was conceived in back of a no. I was I was actually conceived in post-war Vietnam. I was born, a couple years after the U.S. pulled out of Vietnam, and the new regime actually took over a bunch of the businesses and the currency, and everything my parents built was taken from them, and they were basically forced to escape with me on a refugee boat. And so I was the only infant to survive. We spent 8 months on that boat, right, docked outside the Philippines. And then we spent 3 months in a Philippine refugee camp. And then we came over basically to America with nothing. And one would think, hey, you were the only infant to survive. You should be so grateful to be here in America. But, I looked at the people that were around me, and growing up, I remember constantly being teased for the holes in my hand-me-down clothes, to, the stuff my mom sent me to school with, to, constantly being called chinky all the time, go back to your home country. I just remember back then just not liking who I really was as a person. I wanted to be anyone but myself. I was thinking, why do I have these parents? How come my parents can't speak English? Why do I live in this neighborhood? And I realized that I created something, and that there were stories of not being enough, not being good enough, not being American enough, not being tall enough. And that was basically how I lived my life. And to make up for the fact that I was not enough, I had to be more, something different. I had to create a bubbling personality. I had to go into medicine and strive for success, and all these things. And unfortunately, I became, now I'm hopefully maybe a poster child for performance and
You
longevity.
are. You
I
definitely are.
was a poster child of a famous Dalai Lama quote when he asked what he found most interesting about humanity. He said, man, because he would sacrifice his health in order to make money, and then sacrifice his money to recuperate his health.
Yeah.
And basically striving, to achieve something, not knowing that I was already enough. I created this stressful state. All the choices that I was making in, these 7 categories that we're going to touch on basically created this energetic state in my body. It was a stress and survive state. So that was the message I was giving to my DNA. And basically that's when I was overweight, diabetic, had high blood pressure on prescription medications. And so as I started to study, longevity, performance, regenerative medicine, and some spiritual work, science is beginning to understand a part of the brain called the default mode network. And basically what it is like, it's the autopilot or survival mode of the brain. And it's an awesome mode to basically survive and, out in the world. But basically what happens is from the time we're conceived to about the age of 10, we take in all this information from media, from TV, from our parents, from our teachers, from our friends. And it basically is trying to make meaning of the world. It makes up the beliefs and models we have about the world, where we fit in the world. It actually becomes our ego in terms of, our survival. Where do we fit in? And the default mode is always looking for what can hurt us, because it's this survival aspect of our brain. So it remembers the fears, the traumas, the hurts that we have, and it remembers those things. It becomes part of our programming. Disempowering stories of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, it lives in there too. And basically, unless we are aware of this, we're playing basically this program that we learned all the way up until the age of 10. And unless we are aware of this, and unless we have really awesome parents and great environment around us, we're learning these survival mechanisms that is probably great for survival. It's just not great for health, not great for happiness, or not great to become the best version of us. So that program I was running basically had the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same actions that created basically this state that was a stress and survival state. And that's basically us running on old programming. When we start to see the new programming, you talk about Bruce Lipton. He talks about how the movie The Matrix is not a movie, but more of a documentary because it talks about the same thing. Are we living in the Matrix, which is the old programming of what we were programmed to think, or can we see that as old programming? And when we could see it as the old programming, we could start to make new choices. Oh my God, I'm reacting. Oh, it's coming from this old programming. What did Dr. Vuu say? Oh, I can make some new choices in these areas of life. And when I do, I'll start to change up my programming, upgrade my programming, hack my programming. And as I change my state, I am changing my biology as well. So pretty cool stuff.
This is really cool stuff. And I wanted people to know, even though we are going step by step from one longevity hack to another, I want people to know, because it's easy to justify. They look at you, I look at you, and I'm thinking, what problems does he have? He's strong, he's doing all these push-ups, jumping, to the cold plunge with a smile, and, he must be super tough with no problems. I want people to know it hasn't always been like that for you. So I think it's very relevant, because we all go through our struggles, and sometimes we are afraid to maybe expose some of these problems to the world. And I understand why some people wouldn't, and why I'm also, hesitant. What can I share? What cannot I share? Actually, knowing that we can first, like you mentioned, observe our thoughts, observe our state, observe the reasons why we are where we are, and realizing that we are not that already is like Eckhart Tolle, the power of now concept, right? That's already giving us power. Where you are taking this to the next step, and I love it in the context of health, is that, okay, now what? It's not just meditating about the fact that I am not my problem. I am something above it, beyond it. That's good. but what next? And Dr. V is giving us the answer. What next is now it comes to your choices. What are you're gonna do between that, like you mentioned, between the stimulus and response? There is something, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for giving us the context and giving people an understanding that we are all normal. It's like you look like you are, you know, close to perfect when it comes to, you know, body and all that stuff. It hasn't always been like that. I saw your pictures. I saw that you had your own struggles. I want people to know, no matter what's happening to you, it's a temporary state, and it can go worse, it can get better, and a lot of this has to do with your own choices. So let's go to coming like back to our list. So we have number one, we have sleep, right? Very, very important. Even though it sounds like it's normal, a lot of people ignore. What's the next one? What's number two?
The next lever is nutrition, right? I mean, that feeds basically all the nutrients our cells are to play with. And you could spend hours and hours and hours talking about the different facets of nutrition. I just want to boil it down to something really simple. If you just cut out the sugar and processed foods in your life, and if you start eating real food that's minimally processed, that's of good quality, that's basically all you need. And then I throw in intermittent fasting and some time restricted eating to my approach. And that's basically how humans used to live. Some people think, oh, this is something we're just doing. You know what? 300 years ago plus, when there was food around, we ate. When there was no food around, we didn't eat. And in fact, every single species, from single cell to multicellular life, has developed the ability to function and to survive when there is ample energy resources around and when they're not. In fact, we've all evolved in such a way that when energy resources are scarce, we basically renew our body by getting rid of the junk proteins that we have in our cells through a process called autophagy. And we know now that autophagy activates stem cells, it increases longevity, and it also is a big rejuvenation process in our body. It will actually bring down inflammation. So the fact that we are eating throughout the day, that's a more modern idea and concept that is, truthfully making people sick.
So this is, from your perspective, we could simplify it. I know you can go much deeper on that. Simplifying to cutting out sugar or reducing the sugars. Yeah. We have intermittent fasting, some sort of restricted meal planning, and having that time that we are allowing for our body to heal, to detoxify. And also what's interesting for everybody who has not ever tried intermittent fasting is, imagine this: if you didn't have food for a long period of time and you were an animal, you would probably need a little bit more energy and very good mind performance to be able to chase that animal, because if you don't catch that animal, you're done, right? So animal or plant, whatever you're eating. And what's interesting is that when people think they're going to be fasting, they will have zero energy. What happens is quite the opposite, right, Dr. V?
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
energy is possible, more mental clarity and stuff like that. So I think this is fascinating. I don't want to go too deep because I know that especially nutrition is a rabbit hole that is quite deep and maybe even with no end. And right. Everybody has research to support different things. But eating clean, and also you mentioned reducing processed food.
Absolutely. Processed foods have a bunch of stuff that I'm pretty sure most people can't pronounce, and so don't go for that stuff, or at least try to limit that.
Got it. So what's number three? We have sleep, we have nutrition. What's number three? Movement
And exercise, by far right now, in terms of the biggest predictor of performance and longevity as we age, the best bang for your buck over any type of medication, drug, or anything else basically comes down to exercise. It has such great benefits. We were designed to move. We weren't designed to have a sedentary lifestyle. So as long as we are moving, we are, increasing our body's ability to detox, both not only in sweat, but we move our lymphatic system to get rid of, junk in our body. We also increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically like miracle growth for the brain. We increase the feel-good hormones in our body, like endorphins, and we also increase basically the performance and anti-aging hormones like testosterone and growth hormone when we move. How should we move? Again, you could probably go down the rabbit hole. So one, just try to move as much as possible. Like try to, walk instead of taking the car, take the stairs instead of the elevator, have a standing desk, if you can. And if you have to focus on any one particular type of exercise, I would probably say as we age, the most important thing is to maintain lean muscle mass, because lean muscle mass prevents against bone fractures. It's great for bone density, but lean muscle is also the most metabolically active organ in our body. And so having that is super important to maintain metabolic health as well. So that's the movement aspect.
Got it. Very, very important. A lot of people talk about it. The question that I would have here for you is, what about somebody who is dealing with a chronic disease? So maybe we have somebody who is, they want to move, they want to do the resistance, strength training or resistant training. They want to go hard. Maybe they're used to doing it. And right now we are dealing with a chronic situation that has acute episodes of something that is, manifesting itself with like total fatigue and really lack of energy. What about them? What would you do if somebody wants to move but their body is telling them you're not ready yet? Would you go step by step, or would you go complete rest?
No, I would probably say there are very few instances where I would say go complete rest. And movement doesn't, that's why the hack is movement and not weight training. Mm-hmm. That's why the hack is movement, not, HIIT. It's not HIIT. It's not high intensity. It's just a move. And remembering that, just getting up and down, like just, getting up from a chair, sitting down from a chair, and walking are great exercises. So definitely listen to your body, work with a movement coach or a physician who understands movement. But there are probably very few instances where I would say no movement at all. I mean, if you're recovering from surgery that doesn't allow weight bearing, I wouldn't put any weight on it. But, even where you're at, you could be moving your arms. As I'm moving my arms up and down right now, I'm basically moving the lymph system in there. So just include some kind of movement, and certainly, individualize the movement based on your capacity at that time.
Love it. Okay, very good. Thank you for that answer. So basically, guys, no excuses. What's the next one?
So the next one is emotions. So look, I think it's beautiful. I mean, we go to movies and we get angry, we get sad, and we get inspired. All of the human emotions, I think, is a beautiful thing. The spectrum of human emotions. Having said that, if we are chronically in states of anger, fear, resentment, hurt, worry, we are basically, if that's our emotional home, we're basically driving up the stress hormones in our body. Cortisol goes up, inflammation goes up, your immune system goes down, your performance is crap, and then it also puts you prone to getting chronic symptoms and chronic disease. Whereas emotions like joy, like love, like laughter, like connection, particularly that of gratitude, there's scientific studies that demonstrate it does the exact opposite. Those are anti-aging emotions. And so it actually lowers inflammation. It increases our immune system. And imagine a happy person. They've done studies on this. A happy person, whatever job you're doing, it creates better jobs. It creates better relationships. And so that's basically our emotions. So our emotions are basically levers. And what we feel, actually, there's biochemistry behind it. What we feel actually becomes medicine, or it becomes poison. And I'm telling you, like, all those negative emotions are actually poisons for our body, and all the great emotions are actually, are actually medicines for our body. Like I said, at any given moment in time, you could feel all parts of the human emotion, but where's your emotional home? So your default mode network, like I said, might put you in certain states of thinking, feeling, and behaving the same way. So there are ways of getting out of it. And well, one thing I should first of all say, all these 7 hacks like I said, these 7 hacks are the 7 things that most affect the energetics that are around your cell. And they're all energetically connected. So here's the awesome thing. If you're thinking bad thoughts, if you're feeling bad feelings, you don't have to think or feel out of it. You could actually work on one of the other things, and it'll change up the energy, and it'll change your state. And all of a sudden, like, oh, you're connecting with your community. Oh, you start feeling better. You start thinking better. So the cool thing here is whatever you're struggling with in these 7 things, work on something else that's super easy. And when you apply that into your life, you'll start to notice a shift in the energy, and you actually transform all those 7 things together. But things that people could work on emotionally is, one, just being aware of their emotions. Like, how am I feeling? Oh, what triggered that thing? So keeping an emotional diary of where you're at. Then there are things that deal with stress, such as breath work, such as journaling, such as meditation, qigong, singing. There's an activity of laughter yoga I love. There's a lot of resources I talk about in my book, but certainly recognizing your emotions. And then if you start, doing practices like breath work or meditation, you'll start to really see that, oh my God, just from not even thought alone, it's almost a beingness. You could almost just imagine and sort of, become these feelings, just by your focus and your attention, which is why it's so important to maintain your focus and attention. So don't lose it to social media and things like that. But, if you start to cultivate that, you could become these emotions just as a state of being without even doing anything. But certainly, if you know the people, the places, the things that activate those positive emotions, you can include them in your life as well.
Yeah, this is so powerful. And it's double powerful because in the context of longevity, we are talking about, okay, we want to live longer. Longevity. What longevity means to different people may be different things. Where I see, or how I see longevity, it's not only the length, it's just like with sleep. It's not only how much you're in bed, but also how much you actually are spending sleeping and getting the quality of sleep. The same with the quality of our lives. And what matters the most? Emotions. Emotions. Because if we are happy, we are living a life that is worth living. And that's something that every day we are looking forward to. And it's beautiful. And even if we have all these struggles and now we overcome something, even going through the mud of all these problems can still be a joyful experience. Whereas a lot of people are going to live, they're going to count the years, and the counter may say that somebody lived 2 years longer than somebody else, which, by the way, if their emotions are bad, they're not as likely to live that long either. Mm-hmm. But this is so powerful. And I love what you said, that they're all interconnected, these 7 tips. I remember Tony Robbins saying, emotion is created by motion. So we just talked about movement, motion. Yep. Now that's going to help you deal with the emotional stuff as well. So I know we're going a little bit on the surface here, but I want people to understand that even if you're struggling with one of them, what Dr. V is saying, get one of the other ones and elevate it, because there is a high chance that's going to help you with the one you're struggling with.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Let's go with the next one. We have sleep, nutrition, movement, emotions. What's number 5?
The next is mental, which is our thoughts. Now, here's the thing. For most people, because there's this default mode network. So the default mode network is pretty powerful. Like, if I am reaching for something, if my minds have the attention and reaching and doing an action, like picking up this sparkling water, for example, I am using my attention to start that. As soon as I'm not paying attention, guess what? The default mode network turns on, right? The survival, whatever that mode is, it turns on. This whole programming turns on. So it's really powerful. And awareness is one of those things that are going to be key to go, oh, okay, I got to pay attention here. So every single day, most people have 80,000 thoughts that go through their mind. Many of them are repetitive. Why? Because it's coming through old programming. 80% of those thoughts are going to be negative. Why? Because there's a negativity bias to our old programming, because that's the way our body is designed to help us survive. It thinks of the worst outcomes. It thinks of ourselves being not worthy and enough. So that's the old programming. And so, oh my gosh, that sucks. Now, we can't control those thoughts coming in. They'll always be around. Even if we start to upgrade it, it becomes a little bit better, but it'll always be around. But what can we do? What new choices can we make? We can choose where we put the flashlight. How much attention are we giving which thought? We choose our focus. We choose the meaning we give to things. We choose our beliefs and our mindset, and we choose the story we tell about ourselves to ourselves. And all those different things, like, for example, our focus, we can choose to focus on what we have or what we don't have, things that we can control or things we can't control. Are we choosing to focus on the present versus being angry about something in the past? How we choose to change our focus, we feel on what we focus on. And again, because of what we talked about with emotions, emotions are actually our poisons or actually our medicine. So our feelings will change the way we feel, which ultimately changes the biochemistry in our body, right? The meaning that we give to things, right? Was the pandemic, did it happen to you or did it happen for you? That's a quote from Byron Katie. That's one of my favorite quotes is life is simple. Everything happens for you and not to you.
Yeah.
There's a famous quote by Albert Einstein that has a mindset. The most important decision that you'll ever make in life is whether or not you think the universe is friendly or hostile. Yes. I kind of put the quote in there, but imagine living your life, with the lens of everything's friendly or everything's hostile. How will that change? It will change the way you feel. And like I said, how you feel is actually a medicine or a poison, and there's biochemical changes that's happening inside your body. So the things that you can choose that is in your control, and here's the most important thing, is you have to be able to recognize that you have this old programming or an old tendency. And if you could see it, you're like, oh my God, am I thinking from that place? Or am I thinking from a place of possibility? And so we can choose our focus, our meaning, our beliefs and mindset, and we can choose to change the story we tell ourselves. So get this, our biography, the story we tell about ourselves to ourselves actually dictate our biology. I'll say it again. Our biography dictates our biology.
Wow. How many people say that? I don't know how many, but I think it's the first time I ever heard it. And everything you said here is to be rewinded and re-listened again. And even if you heard it, rewind, listen again. So powerful. So powerful. We have so much control, like you mentioned. Yes, on one hand, we have all these thoughts that are coming, and they will keep coming. Like you mentioned, we will not be able to stop all of the negative thoughts. They're coming. We're talking about killing ants, right? Dr. Amen. We are going to kill the ants, automatic negative thoughts. Fine. We're going to know how to kill them. They're going to come, and we know how to reduce them, suppress them. That's fine. But also we have so much control. I love what you said about the flashlight. So what we do control is the focus. If I'm hearing correctly, right? We are controlling our focus. What are we focusing on? And also, what does it mean to us? Because if something happened to me and it's a really crappy problem that, I'm just going through, I can say, I think that's going to be an awesome story one day when I'm on stage teaching.
Oh my God.
Right?
I say that all the time right now. Like recently, last year, I had hired somebody that basically costed my whole brand and company. It was like a terrible hire, probably not a very good person. But I'm like, you know what? Every CEO steps on stage at some point to be able to talk about that story. And honestly, I had to put my lessons to work going through that process of bringing somebody that is probably needs a lot of work on some of their old programming into my sphere. But yes, you're right. And here's the thing, you actually change history when you change the meaning to something. You can actually rewire what's happened in the past. If you make a new meaning from it, your whole body, like, oh my God, that happened. I was allowed to grow. And it actually becomes this part of your biology that now is like inspiring to your life rather than bringing these negative emotions in. So that's how powerful the story we have to tell is.
I love it. I thank you so much for this.
You change that story. You change who you are. You change your state. Imagine who you are now in the workplace. if you're the CEO of a company, when you walk in and you've got an elevated state, look at all the people it changes. Or you walk into your home as the head of the household, how your spouse might feel now that you've got a different state, you know? Which is why I do the work I do, because I feel like, you know, you can have negativity that spreads around the world, or you could have an elevated state that starts to trickle off and you know, creates humanity moving forward in a way that's more collective and more with love.
You know, when I was listening to your keynote there in LA, there were multiple moments, and it's like multiple moments of like pure chills. Like the time stops, everything stops, nobody exists, and you're just there experiencing the speech. And that's something that I was mentioning to you earlier. You have this gift of sharing this with the world, because once they experience it, they want to also do the same and give it back to people, right? So I think that also that person that came to your office and, you know, maybe went maybe was not ready to learn certain things, that was not ideal, it happened also for you, not to you, because right now you can also use that experience to help others overcome some things. Plus you're gonna know how to detect a person like that. So that's very, very good. So we have a lot of value bombs here, and I appreciate you talking about some practical tips how to control our thoughts, which, you know, we are taking it with a very positive spin here, but I also want to be very aware that thoughts can literally kill somebody, because if the thoughts are completely messed up and out of control, that's something that is very dangerous. So by you giving practical tips, and again, guys, think flashlight. What am I going to focus on? Just don't put a flashlight on the thought that you don't want to put a flashlight on. Put it on the one that you want, and then you decide what it means. And if your flashlight happens to be on something that is negative, you can still change the meaning and what it means to you. So I hope that's going to be serving our audience here. So thanks for sharing, Dr. V.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
The next one is social. You know, we were meant, I mean, our cells evolved from single cells to multiple cells to organisms and things like that. And it's all because we work together. And so we thrive as human beings when we have a positive, nurturing community that is around us. You know, this is why loneliness is actually inflammatory. You being lonely increases inflammation that happens in your body. It actually decreases your lifespan by several years if you're lonely. And so having that community is so important. But again, it's positive, nurturing relationships. There are going to be some relationships that are going to be toxic in your life, that drains the energy. And I'm not saying you need to necessarily cut everybody off, but potentially you might need to put up some boundaries of relationships that are, you know, draining your energy or putting you in that stress state, and then putting yourself next to the people that have a mindset, that has the emotions, that has the vibration that you aspire to, and bring more of those people into your life. You know, having those relationships increases oxytocin in our body. And oxytocin, we call it the love hormone, but it's also a hormone that's important for bringing down inflammation, for bringing down blood pressure, for preventing chronic disease.
Yeah, I'm happy that you are also connecting the clinical aspects to the ones that are typically in a different maybe drawer for somebody. Is like they're thinking, okay, this is the clinical conversation and this is the mindset conversation, or this is the you know, conversation about thoughts, or you know, positive peer group or community. Yes, they're all connected, because what happens, the environment that we are in, like you mentioned, it does control our biology. We were talking about melatonin. Okay, yes, everybody's like, oh, that's the sleep hormone. Yes, what about the antioxidant benefits, right? What about this and that? So usually stuff is a little bit more complex than we think, and it's very good for us to just know that we can have this beautiful chemistry factory in our body, which we do have, and we can actually control what's happening, and we can put a nice cocktail there, and then we can enjoy and drink it.
Yep.
Right. And that's the healthy cocktail that you can drink without worrying about, you know, how many hours before sleep you should drink it. You can drink it all day. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So some actionable items that, you know, if you want to, you know, challenge people, 3 people that you could reach out with. And if you increase the regularity of this happening, you'll notice a shift in your biology. One is somebody from your past that you can go just thank. Is it a high school teacher, elementary school teacher, a neighbor, whatever it is? But them getting that, I'm telling you, particularly it came out of nowhere, is going to change their day, change their state. And it's going to change, the people that they interact with as well. But it's going to make you feel really good. If you actually are genuine and you're like thanking somebody with gratitude, boom, you activate that pharmacy of gratitude within you. So that's something that's awesome. So you increase oxytocin and you increase not only the gratitude hormones in your body. The second person you could reach out to is somebody. Doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account or whatever it is. You can always help somebody. You can serve them, and when you help somebody, when you serve somebody, and this is going to go into what I talk about next. But when you serve somebody, you're telling your body, "I've got everything that I need." I am not in survival mode if I'm helping somebody else. And remember, survival mode is the mode of inflammation. And so when you help somebody and lift somebody up, it actually gives you benefits. Purpose adds 7 years of life, to people. And the last thing is somebody you could forgive. Now, it could be very difficult to do so, particularly if somebody did something really, harsh to harm you. And, Nelson Mandela, he was, thrown in jail for 27 years, wasn't allowed to see his friends or family members, tortured, humiliated while he was in jail. And then, back in the, around the 1990s, Tony Robbins met him and he said, "How did you survive that?" He says, "I didn't survive. I prepared. I prepared to forgive." He knew that he had to forgive to free himself up of those emotions so that he could lead South Africa. So forgiveness is something you don't do for other people. It's actually something you do for yourself. Because if you don't forgive, you've got anger, you've got resentment, you've got hate that's in your body, and that's poison, And if you hate somebody for it, you're basically, drinking the poison yourself, hoping it's doing something to the other person. So those would be the three things you could do in the realm of community: people that you can thank, people you could serve, and people you could forgive.
So powerful. And I love it that it's practical too. Like what you just mentioned is something that it's an actionable item, or three, or I should show in America, we show three like this, right? So three, very, very cool. And there's one thing, like you mentioned, there's always that challenge, right? About, forgiving people. There's always a challenge about some situation where somebody did something really terrible, right? And how do we forgive? And I just wanted to share with people what helps me is when I was reading something or watching something to become a better father, I'm thinking about, okay, how do you understand child's behavior, right? So as I'm reading this, there was one thing that really stuck in my mind, and it's helping me in day-to-day life. And it said, when you criticize your child, always remember to criticize the behavior, not the child. So it's not you, but you behave like X, right? But it's not like you are X. And that, I'm taking this to another level. And I'm thinking, okay, if there's a difference between the person and their behavior, which I can tell on my example as well, it happened many times. I wasn't myself when I did some crazy stuff. That really helps me forgive in many cases, because I'm like, they behaved a certain way. It doesn't mean that they are a certain way.
Oh, well, you bring this up. I did a breakout session after my keynote talk, and I was talking about this. It's like when we could start to understand the default mode network, we can begin to understand and have a little bit of compassion for the people that are out there, the people that haven't woken up yet, the people that are basically, because we don't understand the traumas that they've had when they were growing up, the programming that they had, and have they, are they able to see that? And, and understanding this default mode network allows me, oh, this is the human thing that we were meant to evolve from. It's really kind of giving me a deeper understanding of people, rather than saying, oh, he's this or she's that, is having a better understanding of the type of person that might be doing that particular action. And I think the more compassion we have for people, not only does that open up our ability to forgive, but it opens up our ability to start understanding, to give space for other people to become better versions of themselves, and not to be shameful of who they are. I certainly have done things in my past that I'm ashamed of, and
Well, who
Not
didn't?
understanding the default mode, I could always say, oh my God, I'm this person, I'm that person. But, as I started to understand that more and have compassion for myself, I can start to say, oh my God, I am a human being. I'm in this evolutionary process. I could have more compassion for other people. But this is also the thing that I could see so that I can start to elevate and evolve my thinking and being.
So powerful. Oh my goodness. I'm super curious. What's the last one?
The last one is basically spiritual or purpose. It's really understanding that we are a part of, it's understanding two things. Actually, number one, it's understanding who we are as authentic people. Pablo Picasso says the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to give it away. Now, I disagree with him. It's not about finding the gift. I think it's more about remembering the gift. Who we are when we were born into this world, we have greatness encoded within us, you know, and if we could remember that, when we remember the things that bring us joy, when we remember the things that light us up, that puts us in those positive anti-aging emotional states, those things are encoded in our DNA. So our DNA wants us to be happy, wants us to experience all those things. That's who we are authentically. So that's number one, is recognizing, that who we are authentically as that version that doesn't have to be somebody else to be accepted. Who we are authentically is the gift. You are born and you are the gift. And so I do agree with giving it away, is when we remember just who we are and we just share who we are with other people, that's purpose. We got to remember, and if we just look at ourselves like the human body, every single cell does its own thing. The heart cells pumps blood, the lung cell, extracts oxygen from the air. The kidney cells filter stuff. It's each doing its own thing, right? It does this thing to the best of its ability, but it works in connection with the entire body. Everybody has to live their purpose, but serve this greater, sense for us to have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. If you just decide to work for yourself, like, dude, I'm just going to pump, blood, and I'm not going to, give it to the kidney cell, you mess up that system. And then what is that cell? Actually, if you're a cell that, decides to just live for itself and fend for itself, you basically become cancer. That's what a cancer cell is. It's a cell that doesn't give to the whole collective. So you got to ask yourself here, do you want to be the cancer to humanity? Or are you somebody that will, one, just work on yourself, the most authentic version of yourself, and share that? You don't have to do it in a big way. Maybe you share it with, your family just by being you. You just have to be you and share you with other people. And when you share that gift with other people, that's really purpose. The purpose part is just being the most authentic version of yourself and sharing yourself with the world. And that gives 7 years of life expectancy. Those people with purpose, and they end up in the hospital, spend fewer days in the hospital. It also dramatically lowers your risk of getting cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer all around the world. That is the power of purpose. And again, it's not something I think you need to go find. It's something I think you remember. Purpose, I also say, is, we talk about struggle, we talk about obstacles, we talk about challenges or the crap in life, but seeing them as gifts, because through them, we are more resilient, we are stronger, we are a better version of ourselves. And when we become that, when we grow as a person, the more we grow, the more we have to give. That's where we can also find, purpose as well.
Wow. So powerful. And I will tell you, when you look in the mirror, I know that we are talking about physical body and we see the physical body, but the person in terms of energy that you see, you must be freaking proud.
Well, I just feel, yes, but it just feels free. You just feel like I don't have to be somebody else anymore. And when you are that thing, you are magnetic. When you're that thing, you have people like Mike going, hey, Dr. V, do you want to be on my podcast? Right? So you start to attract more people only because you are just you. And when you're the most authentic version of you, you radiate and you become magnetic.
That is really, really awesome. And you're modest, and I will tell you, this is contagious, and I can feel the energy. I felt it, when I met you. I feel the energy, and I can also see other people responding to your energy this way. And I think this is the beauty of life, is when we remember that gift, like you mentioned, and then we share it with the world with without judgment. It's just, this is me, doing my best for not only for myself, but also for the community. And also, to do the best for the community, we need to do the best for ourselves, because once we are healthy and happy, we perform better, and we are also more valuable to the society. So I think that's also very important to mention. I wanted to ask you about a number. So let's say hypothetically, okay, so each one of these tips adds a little bit to our longevity, right? So you know where I'm going with this. So we're going to land at a number that I'm just curious what you think is realistic, right? Because obviously, if we stuck 777, we're going to be at 200 years old and still, doing backflips.
Right.
What's realistic? How many, let's say somebody hypothetically does everything that needs to be done, and luckily their genes are awesome as well. What would you say is currently, I know that number is going to shift, and we want that to shift up, right? Go up. But what do you think right now, 21st century, what's the number that is, how many years can we have possibly with a reasonably good quality of life?
I would probably say 150. You've got people
150.
living to 120, which are the maximum, without any technology. That's just put purely on lifestyle and their being. And I think technology and the science and the medicine is going to augment that. And so, I think 150 is, within the realm of very possible within our lifetime. And I think, our awareness, and as we wake up to the world, as we become more aware of the old programming, as we make new choices and all that, that number will probably continue to increase.
That is awesome. Very, very optimistic. So from our integrative healthcare community, when you talk about doctors, providers, and even people, are you looking, when I say even people, I mean individuals who can support you, Dr. V, right? So you have your mission. I can see what's happening. You are featured everywhere. You're traveling around the world. Beautiful, awesome. And at the same time, a lot of people still want to contribute to your mission, right? So how can we as a community help you? Who are you looking for? Any specific providers, any specific type of people you want to connect with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, thanks for asking. I think, the doctors that might not necessarily have a lifestyle component to understand that, they could certainly integrate my online course, and teach the lifestyle bit so that they don't have to their patients and share that. But, if I want to basically get and use the platform of media, of entertainment, to share the message that I just shared with you. So if you have people out there, people like The Rock are listening, or people in that media and entertainment space, we could use media and entertainment, which is really, I find, a tool to be able to reach the hearts and mind of people, to be able to deliver this message that you are your best medicine.
Wow, so powerful. Let's finish with this one, because you are your best medicine is just a very, very good, optimistic message. Tell people where they can find you, because I'm sure a lot of you want to follow you around and follow you on social.
Great. Well, my website has a bunch of information. It's kienvuu.com, kienvuu.com. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, at Dr. VMD. That's spelled out DOCTOR VMD. If you want to pick up a copy of my book, go to thrivestatebook.com. In fact, you can get 3 free chapters sent right to your inbox right away, so you don't have to wait for the mail to come. But thrivestatebook.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much. This is very valuable to everyone watching and listening. I really appreciate you. We all do.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.